Hi guys, welcome back to the August wrap-up. I'm finally getting around to this. I know we're about a week into September. I had a pretty good reading month overall. I was surprised because near the end I sort of hit, I guess you'd call it a reading slump. I just wasn't really in the mood to read. If I did, I would read very little bit and then I'd go off and do something else. I had trouble just focusing, and at one point I just had to cut down to one book and focus all my attention on that. But overall I still got through 10 books, so I think it was really good. 3 of those were audio, 1 was a graphic novel, 2 of them were classics, so I'm moving along on my goal to read more classics this year, so that's great. So I'm just go ahead and get started with the books. The first one I've read in the month of August was Nevermore by Creagh. Now this one was kind of a carryover from the Booktubeathon. I had started it and not finished it. It was like my 500 plus page book, and I got about a third of the way into it when the readathon ended. But I did a full review for this. You can go ahead and check it. I'll put a link to my channel down below. Absolutely love the book. I love the whole tie-in to Edgar Allan Poe. I love the little treatment of the main character's name, Darren. You unscramble the letters of his name, you get Raven, Edgar Allan Poe's most famous poem. I thought that was really clever. And funny enough, I didn't realize that until I probably got about 3/4 of the way into the book. I'm like, oh, duh. How did I miss that? But I absolutely love the book, the characters, the plot line, everything, and I can't wait to read Enshadowed, which of course is already out. I hope to pick that up pretty soon. I gave this one 5 stars. The next one was an audio book. I listened to Going Bovine by Libba Bray, and I don't have a picture. I'm just going to flash it up on the screen. Can't see it in the corner there. Probably not the craziest book I've read. That goes to Beauty Queens, also by Libba Bray. But this one ranks right up there. It's about a kid. It does have a sad storyline to it, though. But it's about a kid who has somehow contracted mad cow disease, and there's really no cure for it. He ends up in the hospital where he meets this sort of sugar-addicted, punk-rocking angel by the name of Dulcie, and she tells him of a Dr. X who may hold a cure to his disease, and also could save the planet from some impending doom from dark matter. And he sets off on this Don Quixote-like journey to search for Dr. X. And traveling along with him is a Mexican dwarf by the name of Gonzo and a garden gnome by the name of Balder. And this garden gnome claims he's descended from Norse gods. And he keeps getting kidnapped from college students, and they're bringing him to frat parties and stuff, and for photo opportunities, and our main character has to keep going after him and rescuing him, and it's while he's still proceeding on this journey. And it was really interesting where the author kind of has the humor side of it with that, and then slips in these moments where the main character, whose name keeps slipping out of my head here, Cameron, he kind of slips back into his body, and he's back in the hospital, and sometimes interacting with people around him as if it all is together, all in one, and it doesn't seem to bend his mind around too much, which was kind of odd, because I'm thinking, wait, where am I now? Am I in the hospital, or are we with the character out in this journey? So it took a bit to kind of focus on it, but it was really, really interesting, really well read, and written, rather, and I just got a text message. So I really definitely enjoyed it, and I gave that one 4 stars. The next book was one I borrowed. I don't have a copy of it, but it is the second book in the Zom-B series by Darren Shan, and it's called Zom-B Underground. That's a little image of it. I don't know if you can see that. I can't, unfortunately, make these pictures bigger. But it's a... I kind of described the first book just entitled Zom-B in my last wrap-up for last month about a main character by the name of B, and she grows up in this family whose father is a total racist. He's like a neo-Nazi kind of character, and even though she has friends of different racial backgrounds, she still has these sort of attitudes that she's inherited from her father and from what she's heard, and she kind of struggles with those two sides of herself. And then this zombie attack kind of happens at the school, and all hell breaks loose. And you see the character kind of come to some conclusions about, what her upbringing and stuff, and her father. And it was really interesting in the first book, but the writing style and the overall plot wasn't all that much, and I only gave that 3 stars. The same thing kind of for Zom-B Underground. You find out what has happened to B. That's all we know. Her name is just B. we find out what has happened to her after the conclusion of the first book, and the story continues from there. I don't want to get too much into detail. There's an introduction of a strange clown-like character, and his name is Mr. Dowling, and he seems to be controlling the zombies around, and we don't know what this character is, what their main agenda is, and it'll be interesting to see that. Again, I felt kind of just so-so with this second book in the series, and I only gave this one 3 stars, but I think I will still pick up the third book and go from there and see if it improves any, if it makes me want to continue, because I've heard this may be a 12-book series, and there's like 5 books out in the U.S. so far, so I'll give it at least another go and see if it picks up from there. We'll see. The next one I read was Beautiful Creatures, and this is by Cami Garcia and Margaret Stohl. Again, I did a full review on this one, and I'll put links to that down below, so I won't get into all the detail about it. I think most people have probably already read this one. I'm a little late to the party, but I absolutely love the writing, the story. A little slow in the beginning, but I'm definitely intrigued. Finally, now that I finished it, we'll be able to rent out the movie, although I've heard mixed reviews on that, so we'll see. I'll at least have an understanding of the characters and the whole background to the book. Maybe you need that to go see the movie, and maybe there's too many pieces missing out of the movie, so we'll see. But I love this one. Again, check out my review down below, and I gave this one 4 stars. The next one that I read for the month was a graphic novel, and that was Dead at 17 by Josh Howard. This is the Ultimate Edition, which like combines 5 different graphic novels together in one bind-up. Again, I did a full review for this one. This was sort of just kind of a cover buy, you might say. I walked into a graphic novel store. I was looking for some new stories to read, just something that would catch my eye, and the artwork in this one definitely did. I felt it was going to be something along the lines of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, with sort of a badass main character. Again, you can check out my full review down below. As much as I love the artwork, there's parts where it's at times confusing between characters. You might see like these 2 women on this line here. They look very much the same. Sometimes the only difference you can see is the eye color. There are parts in here where, at times, it seems to be more focused on, you know, scantily clad women. I had like a little too much of that for my taste, but overall, I thought it was really good. There's sort of religious overtones to the main storyline that I wasn't expecting, but it's not heavy-handed. I am kind of curious to see where the rest of the story goes, because apparently it does continue beyond this book, and I will be picking it up, but like I said, some parts with the artwork and stuff and the storyline kind of dipped in, I think it was I forgot if it was book 3 or 4 in here, and then it kind of picked back up again. But for that reason, I gave this one 3 stars. The next one, I listened to an audio version of Passion by Lauren Kate, and that is book 3 in the Fallen series. I won't get into too much detail of it since it is a book 3 in a series. For this whole Fallen series for me is pretty much kind of a 3 stars. I mean, it's interesting. This one, our main character, gosh, I'm forgetting the names, Luce and Daniel. Those are the 2 main characters. And Luce kind of, in a way, time travels. She goes back through her own lifespans to kind of try and figure out what this curse is that keeps her from being with Daniel forever, why she keeps dying and then being reborn and then dying and being reborn. So she's trying to find a way to break this curse. So there's a lot of travel back through her time, and it got a little repetitious and a little drawn out for me, and like, okay, here's another life and another life and another. Like, I had a bit too much. It was interesting learning some of the characters, but after a while it was just too drawn out for me, and again, I just gave it 3 stars. I will, of course, oops, how did I get over here? I will, of course, continue the series, because I do have the last book, Rapture, so I'm kind of curious to see where it all finishes. The next one, onto the physical copies, it was an ARC copy I have of the book 7 Wonders, The Colossus Rises. This is by Peter Lerangis, and this is a middle grade book written by one of the co-authors of the Percy Jackson series, written with Rick Riordan, which I have not read, but heard wonderful things about. This one I got at work, and it's a little confusing to describe. I'm going to read a little bit of the synopsis for you. Hi, Skippy. The dog just walked in. So, it says, one boy, Jack McKinley, is an ordinary kid with an extraordinary problem. In a few months, he's going to die. One mission, he needs to find 7 magic loculi, I'm sure if I'm pronouncing that right, that when combined have the power to cure him. One problem, the loculi are the relics of a lost civilization and haven't been seen in thousands of years. 7 wonders, because they are hidden in the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The thrill begins in the Colossus Rises, the first book in the epic 7 Wonders series. So I'm assuming there's going to be 7 parts. So yeah, we're introduced to Jack, our main character, is a teenage kid. He is, and kind of early on in the book, he is hit by a car, winds up in, think he's going to wake up in a hospital. But when he does wake up, he wakes up in a place called the Creagh Institute, run by scientists, including one Professor Bagad. And Professor Bagad kind of explains to him that after he had come into the hospital, they discovered sort of a mark on his head, which they refer to as a lambda. My pronunciations today, it's a lambda. And it's only on very select people. It's sort of like a genetic marker in a way. And they went into his DNA and were able to see this G74 DNA marker that is somewhat descendant from the Atlanteans, and they've only found it in the select, as they call it, which was like 5 young teenagers. The 5th one did not survive because he didn't receive some sort of treatments that they have developed to keep him alive. It seems like this genetic marker will end up killing the carriers. And it has something to do with the brain and the serosacrum, which apparently is like a division in the brain, and most humans use more, like very small percentage of the brain, and the people with this genetic marker are able to like crack through that barrier and can have either super strength or really genius minds and things like that. But it also sort of burns up the body really fast. So somehow they're able to, the first stage is like an operation that's able to kind of delay death, and there's other procedures that they can do in the meantime. But they have also discovered that somehow this tied to Atlantis, there's some kind of loculi that has a power that when brought together will presumably be able to cure these kids. And they come to discover that they are hidden within the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Well, as you know, there's only one remaining 7 wonder of the ancient world, and that's the Great Pyramids at Giza. All the others have disappeared or disintegrated. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, or as in this book, the Great Colossus at Rhodes, which was a giant statue. So they're in search of this giant statue. Like I said, only 4 total kids have survived at this point, and one of them is Jack, our main character. There's Allie, Cass, and Marco are the 3 others in this book who become his friends on this journey to find this loculi. And it's just full with a lot of adventure and action. It's almost non-stop action, almost action to the point of just having action in it. It got a little bit too much. I'm like, oh, here we go again. It's like another action scene. They're battling some creatures or something, they have to, there's like a lot of codes and things that they have to decipher. That part was kind of interesting. I like the ties to the whole history because I'm fascinated with the whole 7 wonders of the ancient world. I think that's just amazing, the things that were created. And I like that part of the story. I like the main characters, but I got a little too much with the action. I'm hoping the next story in this series might pick up a little bit. Overall, I just gave this one about 3 stars. What was next? Frankenstein. Well, I'm not going to show you a picture. There's so many different versions of Frankenstein. I actually listened to this one on audio, and it was like an enhanced audio, so it was pretty cool. It's because the story itself is told from 3 points of view. We begin with R. Walton, a man on a ship who's writing letters to his sister and talking about his journey and this gentleman he comes across by the name of Victor Frankenstein and the story that he tells him. And that's when the story switches to Victor Frankenstein's voice, and he tells of his fascination with life and the creation of life and immortality and how he was driven to create this being, which he was appalled when he sees what it looks like and the horror of it, that he immediately runs away. And later on discovers what his creature has done and the terror that it's causing, and even in his own personal life. And now he's on this journey to try and track him down and stop him. And how he had met up with him at one point. And that's where you kind of get insight into Frankenstein's monster. And at near the very end of the book, of course, the monster shows up and tells his point of view. So it was really interesting the way the audiobook did it, and there's 3 different voice actors telling the story to me, and I really enjoyed that. It does get a little slow, I think, in the beginning with the letter writing part with our Walton to his sister, until the main story gets in and you know, Frankenstein has created this creature. So overall, I mean, it's hard to rate a classic, but I gave this one 4 stars. It was just like I said, the 1 star off because it was a little slow going in the beginning of it. Then the next one. What, that's the next one? The next one I finished reading, which was probably my favorite of the month and like one of the favorites of the year so far. And that's the Wishing Spell. That's book 1 in the Land of Stories series by Colfer. Beautifully written book, middle grade story, ties all your favorite fairy tales together. Did a full review on this one on the channel down below, so definitely check it out. Need to pick this one up. I can't wait to start book 2, which is right there, so it will be soon. And I gave this one 5 stars. And finally, is that all of them? Yeah, just about. One more book. Last month I had read The Turning by Francine Prose, which is sort of a modern day retelling of The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. This one I was a little bit disappointed in, but it intrigued me enough to want to pick up the actual classic. So, a thin little book. And I love the cover. I found this in a used bookshop and fell in love with it. Overall, this is, the main story is a young governess is sent to this sort of remote country estate to look after 2 young children, one Miles and... I've forgotten the girl's name. Oh, yeah. Oh, Flora. Yes. Miles and Flora. And there's only, I think, like a housekeeper there, and so it's just the 4 of them. And as she's telling us the story from her point of view, she starts to see these 2 kind of ghostly figures, one of a man and one of a woman. But as the story progresses, you begin to wonder, is she actually seeing these ghosts, or is she slowly slipping into insanity? And that is sort of left ambiguous throughout the entire book. You never quite know for sure. And there's also another side of the story, which is the boy Miles. When he returns from school, he returns with a letter from the school saying that he's no longer welcome back. And you're always wondering throughout the thing, what is the reason for that? And although I love the gothic-y feel to it and the terror that this woman kind of experiences when she sees these figures and her feeling of needing to protect the 2 children under her care, I loved all that, but it was just a little too ambiguous. I wanted a little bit more answers to it. And I was rather shocked. Maybe it's because it's so small. It has such an abrupt ending. It was just like, boom. Well, wait, where's the rest of the book? There was something definitely missing for me at the end of it, so I was rather disappointed in that. So those couple aspects knocked me down to 3 stars on this one, so I was hoping for a little bit more with this, but I still appreciated like the ghostly gothic-y feel to it. Those are some of my favorites in terms of classics. So overall, that was my August wrap-up. I hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, let me know what you guys read this month, and I will see you in my upcoming videos, whatever that happens to be. Bye!